Tonight, in a tiny wooden house, Linda feels a sudden, unmistakable kick while Quang's hand is on her belly. And in that quiet second, he realizes this Tet won't just change their home, it will change their entire life. Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we're going to explore this warm, intimate Tet episode as Linda and Quang clean their simple little wooden house, share small promises, and prepare a safe, loving space for their baby. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next episodes. The wooden house is quiet in that early Tet way. No city roar, just the soft complaint of floorboards and wind brushing the bamboo fence. Pine walls glow honey warm in the morning light. The kitchen is only a few steps from the bed. Everything feels close, simple, held. Linda stands in the living room with a handwritten checklist. She looks around at the small altar table near the window, the vase of marigolds, the worn sofa that still smells faintly like sun-dried blankets, and rests a palm on her belly. This year, she whispers, smiling, we clean for 3. Quang pauses in the doorway, tie loosened, 2 mugs in his hands. He watches her like he's saving the moment. For 3, he repeats as he steps in. Then we clean smart. Linda lifts her chin. I am smart. Quang sets the mugs down and comes behind her, arms loose around her shoulders, more a promise than a hold. His gaze flicks to the chair near the top shelf. Smart means no climbing, he murmurs. Linda glances at the folded red cloth up high and makes an innocent face. I wasn't going to. Quang raises one eyebrow. Linda laughs softly, and the little house feels warmer for it. She holds up the checklist. I made a plan. He scans it, and his mouth twitches. You wrote baby corner with exclamation points. It deserves it. Quang pulls out a sticky note, writes, and presses it onto her paper. Break 15 minutes. Linda blinks. That's not cleaning. That's keeping my wife out of trouble, he says lightly, but his hand slides to her belly, gentle. You're carrying a whole person. Her eyes soften. She covers his hand with hers. I know. Quang studies her face. Say your tasks. Linda sighs, playing along. Sorting, wiping low surfaces, folding, organizing drawers. And, he prompts. And sitting, she adds, teasing. He nods, satisfied. If anything feels heavy, you stop. You text me. You treat me like I'm glass, Linda says. No, Quang answers quietly, stepping closer until she has to tilt her head up. I treat you like you're precious. The word lands deep. Linda doesn't make a scene. She just exhales and slides her arms around his waist. In a house this small, love shows up in small places, where the water sits, how someone watches you step. Quang glances at the clock. I have to go in for a few hours, he says, just to close things before holiday. Linda nods, trying to keep her voice steady. I know. He sets her up anyway, tangerines on the table, warm water in a thermos, her phone plugged in within reach. He opens the window a crack so the air moves without turning cold. At the door, Quang pauses, hand on the wooden latch. No climbing. Linda raises 2 fingers. No climbing. Brakes. Brakes. And if you feel dizzy, I sit, she finishes. Quang smiles, relieved. Good. I'll come back early. The door closes with a soft click. The house exhales. Linda stands a moment, listening to his motorbike fade down the lane. Then she turns toward the checklist again, hand returning to her belly. All right, she murmurs. Let's make this place ready. She puts on old Tet songs, low volume like a memory humming, and starts with the baby clothes. Tiny shirts, little socks, folded slowly, smoothed with her palm. touching them makes the future feel close enough to breathe. She wipes the low shelves, sorts a small pile of papers, puts things back where they belong. The house doesn't have much, but it holds their life in little corners. Linda finds a chipped photo frame, her and Quang in the rain, both laughing, and sets it back in the center of the shelf like it's part of the home's heartbeat. Her eyes lift to the top shelf again. The folded red cloth calls to her like tradition. She drags the chair a few inches, then stops. "No climbing," she hears in her head. Linda exhales, half amused, half stubborn. "Fine," she whispers to the shelf. "You win." Her phone buzzes, one message from Quang. "How's my boss at home?" Linda smiles and types back, "Working, light tasks, no climbing." She's pushing the chair back into place when a gentle knock comes at the door. Auntie Han from next door stands on the porch with a small tray covered in cloth. Her sweater is worn soft with years, and her smile is bright. "I smelled cleaning," Auntie Han says, stepping inside. "I knew it," Linda laughs. "Come in, Auntie." Auntie Han looks around the wooden room with approval. "Warm house," she says, voice softening. "Kind house." Linda's chest warms at the words. "It's simple," she says. "Simple is best," Auntie Han replies, lifting the cloth to reveal candied ginger and a jar of pickled onions. "For Tet, and for your stomach." Linda starts to protest, but Auntie Han waves it off. "Sit. You don't need to prove anything to Tet." They settle at the small table. The house makes room for conversation the way it makes room for light. Auntie Han's eyes flick to the chair near the shelf. "You were going to climb." Linda puts a hand to her chest, offended. "Me? Never." Auntie Han snorts. "Tet is not a competition. Clean what you can, rest what you must." Linda swallows, the advice hitting deeper than she expects. Quang says that too. "Good man," Auntie Han says simply. Linda glances up at the top shelf. "I just wanted to wash that red cloth." Auntie Han stands immediately. "Then we do it properly." Before Linda can argue, Auntie Han climbs onto the chair with steady balance, reaches up, takes down the folded cloth and the small box beside it, and steps down carefully. "There," she says, placing them in Linda's hands. "No heroics." Linda lets out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. "Thank you." Auntie Han sits again and sips tea like the matter is settled. "Now," she says, "tell me, what do you want this house to feel like when the baby arrives?" Linda holds the cloth. It smells faintly of sun and old incense. She looks around at the pine walls, the marigolds, the warm rectangle of light on the floor. "I want it to feel," her voice turns tender, "safe, like even if life gets loud, this place stays gentle." Auntie Han smiles slowly. "Then you already have it." Linda's hand returns to her belly. In their small wooden home, simple, warm, and full of quiet care, she believes it. Quang came in with the day still on him. Cool air, a hint of street dust, the quiet rush of someone who had been moving fast to get back. He nudged the door closed with his heel and paused when he saw Auntie Han at the table. Linda was by the low cabinet, stacking towels into a neat pile. She stood slowly and smiled. "You're home." "I finished what I could," Quang said. He set a small bag on the table and stepped to her first, kissing her temple. His palm rested on her belly for a brief check-in. "You feel okay?" "I'm okay," Linda said, steadier than she'd expected. Auntie Han watched him like a judge who had already decided. "Don't let her do anything silly." Quang's eyes flicked to the chair by the window, to the red cloth drying. He gave a quiet, grateful nod. "I won't." Linda crossed her arms. "I did nothing silly." Auntie Han's eyebrow rose. Quang's mouth twitched. Linda gave up and laughed softly. Quang rolled up his sleeves. "What's left?" "Under the sink, the rice jar area, the floor," Linda said. "Sit and supervise," Quang replied. "I can wipe the counter," Linda bargained. "You can while I'm right here," he said, gentle. "No bending too long." He moved into the kitchen and knelt, pulling out bottles and bowls, lining them up on the floor. Linda leaned in the doorway and wiped the counter in slow circles, stopping when her back tightened. Quang noticed without a word, set the bottles aside, and brought her warm water. "Break," he said, like it was normal. Linda sat at the table, pretending to frown. "You're turning rest into a rule." "It is a rule," Auntie Han said, satisfied. Quang lifted the rice jar and slid it back into place. He swept the wooden floor in long strokes, pushing dust toward the door, then wiped the baseboard with a damp cloth he'd wrung himself. Small motions, steady hands, the kind of care that didn't ask for praise. Auntie Han stood and gathered her tray. "All right, I'm going." She looked at Linda's belly with a softness that made Linda's throat tighten. "Talk to the baby. Tell them this place is ready." "Thank you, Auntie," Quang said, bowing his head slightly. When the door closed, the house felt private again, like it could finally breathe. Quang washed his hands and returned to the living room. He lifted the red cloth carefully and looked at Linda. "Altar table." Linda nodded. "I wanted it clean before Tet." He folded it with care and laid it over the small table near the window, smoothing it flat with his palms. He nudged the marigold vase toward center and straightened the framed photo beside it. The gestures were quiet and respectful, like he was learning love through doing. Linda watched, surprised by how tender he looked. "You're doing it like you've always done it." "I haven't," Quang admitted. "I just want it to feel right." "It does," Linda said. She reached for the table edge, then paused when a firm pressure rolled through her stomach, more presence than pain. Her hand went to her belly. Quang turned instantly. "Hey, it's not bad," Linda said quickly, eyes widening. A small push answered beneath her palm. "Oh!" Quang froze, unsure whether to touch. Linda took his hand and placed it where she'd felt it. "Here." They stood still. Another soft movement came, unmistakable. Quang's eyes went wet. His mouth opened, then closed again. "Hello," he whispered finally. "We're here." Linda leaned into him, breathing slow. "They're strong." Quang's palm stayed steady. "They're ours," he said, simple and sure. Linda let out a shaky laugh, half relief, half joy. "This little house, it's enough." Quang kissed her hair. "Because you're in it." For a while, they stayed on the floor near the window, letting the moment settle. Quang opened the small bag he'd brought home and pulled out a few simple things. A new sponge, a small roll of tape, and a red paper tassel that looked handmade. Linda touched it and smiled like it was something expensive. "You bought this?" she asked. "It was on the counter," Quang said. "I thought you'd like it." They hung it from a wooden beam near the doorway. Quang held the tape. Linda guided the tassel into place with careful fingers. When it finally sat straight, she clapped once, quietly pleased. The little decoration moved with the air every time the door opened, like the house was breathing. They sorted one small box together, old receipts, a cracked lighter, a tiny souvenir keychain, deciding what to keep and what to let go. Quang didn't push. Linda didn't cling. They made space without making it painful. They ate early. Rice, eggs, greens, soup. Nothing fancy, everything warm. Quang kept hovering until Linda pointed at him with her chopsticks. "Sit," she ordered, smiling. "I'm learning," he admitted, and sat. After dinner, he washed the dishes while Linda rested with her feet on a low stool. The pine walls held the lamp's soft light, and the house smelled clean, like wood after rain. When he finished, Quang came behind her and rubbed her shoulders with his thumbs. Linda's breath loosened. "You didn't push too hard today," he said. "I wanted to," Linda confessed, "but I didn't." Quang's hands paused. "Thank you." Linda turned her face to look at him. "You keep thanking me for resting." "Because it's hard for you," he said. Her voice dipped. "I don't want to feel useless." Quang crouched beside her so their eyes were level. "You don't have to earn your place here," he said, calm and firm. "You are my home. Resting doesn't make you smaller." Linda's eyes stung. She reached for his hand and held it to her cheek for a second, grounding herself. "Then don't leave me alone in my head," she whispered. "I won't," Quang said. "Not tonight." He turned off the bright light and left only the small lamp near the bed. The house softened into gentle shadows. He guided Linda to sit comfortably, placed warm water within reach, then sat beside her with his shoulder against hers. Linda rested her hand on her belly. Quang covered it with his. They stayed still, listening to the tiny creaks of wood settling and a distant radio drifting through the night. The baby moved once, faintly, like a sleepy answer. Linda's lips curved, tired and content. Quang kissed her knuckles and kept his hand there, steady as the small wooden house held them in its warm, simple calm.
Tập này Linda và bà Linda theo bà và cậu cháu ra nương mía. Dưới nắng sớm, bà vừa chặt mía vừa kể chuyện ngày xưa. Dậy chặt 3 hoặc 4 khúc cho đẹp để bán được giá. Đồng mía cao dần, 45 đồng trở thành hy vọng cho phiên chợ. Một cây mía đổ bất ngờ khiến cả nhóm kêu, rồi cười xòa vì kịp đỡ nhau. Chiều xuống, Linda buồn bã vì con rúi của mình đã biến mất. Nghi có kẻ trộm rình quanh nhà. CEO Quang ghé đến lắng nghe và trấn an và tự sửa chiếc camera cũ trong kho, kéo dây lắp trước sân nhà để bảo vệ cô. Đêm đến, Linda nấu cơm nếp cẩm mời anh ở lại ăn. Hai người trò chuyện lòng ấm lại. Quang kể áp lực công ty, camera nháy sáng, bóng lạ thoáng qua, và không biết Linda có sống sót qua được đêm nay không. Mọi người nếu thấy video hay, hãy cho mình một like, một subscribe. Cảm ơn mọi người nhé.